Oh. I'm not that concerned.
There's only 39 deaths as an hour ago in
Yeah,
America
this is
for
probably
coronavirus. So, okay.
$50 right now on eBay.
39, there was a new one.
Terrible, but yes.
Oh, it just as,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's my office manager's on it. He's been tracking it for all our clients because we're going,
Okay.
oops, let's get going.
All right. All right, call to order. I need to hit it.
Yep. There you go.
Got to make it happen. All right, first item of business is the approval of the minutes from the January 30 meeting. Do we have, anybody want to
You
first
have
take
a copy of your minutes in your packets, and they were distributed prior to the meeting.
Got them right here. Approve.
Okay, we have a first, or
First.
what's the word?
Second?
Second? Someone second the
Second.
meeting? Second, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, approval of the minutes are gone forth. And item number 3, citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda, and we have an empty house today, so.
We did have a photographer. Where was the photographer? Was City Clearwater? I didn't get her. Okay. She works for city.
Right on. Okay, and let's go right to new business items, review the staff update. Mr. Hubbard,
All right, thank you, sir.
you're up.
I'd like to welcome our new member, Danny Olda. Danny is from Creative Pinellas. They're our county arts agency.
Right on, welcome, Danny.
So Danny completes our board. We now have a full 7 members on the roster.
Fantastic.
Let's see, item number 4.1, review a staff update on the Imagine Clearwater Project Public Art Component. I have for you in your packet, there should be a photograph of some plans. These are the 60% plans that we received recently. Currently, Stantec, our plan designers, are preparing 60% flyovers and images for our public marketing campaign, and they will be added to the Imagine Clearwater website once that is available. So that website is imagineclearwater.com. The video that you have displayed on the monitor here is from that site. These are the 30% plans, and I just wanted to bring up part of the park so you'd be able to take a look at what it looks like as we're going through this sheet of information. Now, Stantec has identified 18 sites for public artwork or art components. What I mean by art components is that these could be a designed art feature and that it might not necessarily be a public art installation. So you'll see some works that could look very artistic, but would serve as a directional function, a seating element, some other incorporation. And those would fit within our public art master plan as functional elements. They just might not be designed by an outside artist. The idea behind that is to make sure that we're condensing our public art into sites and locations where they'd be impactful and not distributing the allotment too far to where the public art is of a scale that's too small or does not fit within that section. So we'll go ahead and I will read to you the text that's on the side there. Site number 1 is on your left-hand side of the page. It is the South Bluff Walk. They've identified this as a human-scale, 6-foot sculpture on a pedestal, and that the subject could be abstract artwork. Let me rewind a little bit. In going through these, as you look at the sites, and I'll bring my information up here so I can point to it on the monitor for you. I'm going to stand up here and point to the sites on the monitor for you. The intent behind going through these sites is if you see an area that you feel is a gathering point or would be a site for impactful artwork, let me know so I can bring that to Stantec and say, let's really kind of focus some effort into this area here. Right now we have, if the 1% for artwork is in its cap mode, it is $200,000. Per the ordinance, we have a cap on capital improvement projects that the funds need not exceed $200,000. However, as we get further into the agenda, we have an inquiry within our legal department to see if that cap can be removed or does not apply to this project. So that would then allow us to have $645,000 worth of artwork for this site, which is significantly more and would be much more beneficial and fitting allotment. In addition to that, we have design funds that we're working with our designers to incorporate those art elements. So if there's an area that could be a wayfinding device and can just be considered art design, that won't eat away at our public art component.
Awesome.
And we'll have more for those impactful sites. So the first one is part of the South Bluff Walk. On the monitor, if you're looking here at this high-rise, that's Station Square, that's Water's Edge Tower. The South Bluff Walk is back here. It's a pedestrian area. It's intended for people to just meander through and enjoy some planters and some native trees back there. It's meant as a sort of downtown mini nature walk. They've identified that as a 6-foot or so sculpture that's human scale on a pedestal. Yes, sir.
Hey, Chris, it looks like they taking out those tennis courts. Is that correct?
They are removing the bayfront tennis courts, yes.
Okay.
Yep. So this would be in that section. It's the uplands. It's the area where the previous city hall, there's a large berm that you have to walk down. It's elevated about 20 or so feet. That's that area, and they've made diagonal, or rather ramping, access for people of all abilities to be able to walk and meander through that area. So they're recommending a pedestrian scale installation there. I'm going to go to Site 2. That is back here in the lake. And let me see if I can get a better view of that section for you. So this is the lake area of the park. It's intended to be inspired by our sister cities connection to Nagano, Japan. Our relationship is now in its 60th year. We hope to get to Japan at some point. When we'll be able to go there, we're not sure. But this is meant to establish a connection with them visually. One of the items that is part of our delegation visit to Japan, to Nagano, is to incorporate an artist from Nagano City into the design of this section. So we have 2 sites here, Site 2 and 3, Japanese-inspired sculpture and a Japanese-inspired moon gate. Moon gate is a half-circle ring that's done through stacking of stones with a keystone in the middle. They're very popular for people visiting locations to take their photo under, and the fable is that you go through the moon gate and you get good luck. So when people get married, they like to have their photos beneath the moon gate and travel through. And the hope is that this park area could be used as a wedding grounds. There's a little bit of a, if you look to the right of the screen, you'll see those purple and pink flowers. That's sort of a flat area there that would be able to serve as a wedding location if people so deem that.
Awesome.
So those are sites 2 and 3. My recommendation would be that we look with some public art dollars into that Japanese-inspired sculpture, that we'd be able to involve the artist from Nagano into the design of that. The moon gates, they look pretty similar no matter where you are. It's really the composition of the stone or the way that they've put it together in how that looks. So that's Site 3. Site 4. We're going to come back to the Bluff Walk area. We don't have a whole lot of that zone. This is kind of what is part of the Bluff Walk. You can just see it's more of a pedestrian promenade that borders the lake. They're looking for a large sculpture interwoven into the landscape planting area. Now, this could be a stela or a column with mosaic on it that's done by a craftsperson or a local artisan that need not be a huge investment, but can be a colorful addition to that area. What, pardon me, what they're recommending as far as interwoven with the landscape planting, that would need to be maintained. The landscape would grow up to take over that at some point. So the recommendation is that it's not a highly delicate or sensitive piece of artwork. Mosaic might work well, painted column or decorative concrete might work well there as well. Those are things that can be done internally within Stantec's design and done at the time of construction of the site. So that is Site 4. Site 5 is in this area here. You see these columns of trees and this little islands there. Site 5 is that island. It would make for a, it's also the kind of right in the middle of the pedestrian drop-off zone for cars as they come down from Cleveland Street and drop off very close to the green, which serves as our park space. Larger piece of public art, something impactful, something that tells people that they've arrived to the site would work quite well there. They're recommending a large, over 8-foot vertical sculpture that you can view from all sides, that people would be able to navigate around and serve as a gathering point. One that's very successful in this is the lightning bolts at Amalie Arena. Many people will meet at the lightning bolts there when they're having parties join them, and they can go inside into the arena. So this is recommended that we would have a commissioned artist do this portion here. Sites 6 through 9 are located around the green, which is the concert space. Get you a good view of that. Sorry, this is the best imagery that I have of the site so far. This is the green space, as well as the amphitheater, which you may have heard lots of discussions over. The artwork, or rather the art sites, are bordering the entrances into the green. They're meant to be sort of wayfinding devices, totems, any kind of identification that this is an entry point into that area by the sidewalk. These could be an artwork component on the top, away from a lot of heavy stream of traffic which will be going in and out of those. My thought is that an artist could design some kind of capstone feature for these, and the artist would be paid a design commission, and the design firm would then create multiples of that to be put on those capstones. That way each of the 4 points would have something in common with one another. As people move around the park, they've got that repeating element that they can feel comfortable with.
So you're thinking like one artist for all 4, if they did all 4, if that was an idea?
That is an idea.
Okay.
We could have 4 artists. I'm just trying to think of consolidated ways of the budgeting.
That makes sense, yeah.
So those are sites 6 through 9. Site 10 is the promenade, which is this area here along the waterfront. We have an existing piece of public art downtown, or down there rather, that's going to be removed and reinstalled after construction is completed. That's our Middens project. It's the 2 stainless steel dishes. They're lit with LEDs on the bottom, and they're on top of a grass midden mound that was designed by Cliff Garton. That will be replicated once it's put back into the site. Site 10 is very close to it. If you're looking at your paper here, just to the left of Site 10, you'll see a half circle with a sort of bullseye target in the middle. That's where Middens will be installed. It's going to be right at the foot of the walkway out onto the downtown marina. That brings it further north and makes it a little bit more prominent for people that are using that site. Site 10 will have to be carefully chosen, so we're not competing visually with Middens, but perhaps something complementary to it. We could use stainless steel. I think we could involve an artist with that, but I don't want to create too much visual discord between them. They're really going to be about 30 feet apart, I think.
It's pretty close.
It is, yeah. So one of the comments that I want to make to Stantec is let's take a look at that and decide visually how we want to serve that area with artwork. Very close to it too as well, you'll see these braziers that are in the design. They're very tall, sort of woven, open basket style sculptures that have a flame component to them. That's currently in the 30% design, but we have a design meeting tomorrow morning to go through the 60% design. So any comments that you have today, I will be able to bring to them, or any ideas that you might have. I'm just trying to look for an example of that.
Is it an actual live flame or is it?
Right, yes, it's a natural gas serviced flame.
Wow.
Which would definitely,
Sorry, that's in area 11?
that is area 10.
Oh, it's still in 10.
Still, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to acclimate you to what's kind of nearby that site.
But they go along the walkway up against
Yes.
the water.
Yeah.
There's multiple ones of them.
Correct, yeah, they'll be dotted. If you look, there's some small repeated dots that follow to the right of Site 10, and those are those braziers.
You're talking about the flames?
Yes, yep,
City of Clearwater Gas might like that.
yes, they're very interested in those. And they're quite large, they're about, they're greater than 12 feet, but possibly more,
They're huge.
yeah.
So where does the budget come for the gas that's gonna be consumed throughout the year on that?
Gas would be sponsoring that. It's a good question.
And then like how many cubic feet, or how many therms of gas does that consume in a day?
Right,
I mean,
and
it
that's,
just seems kind of wasteful.
yeah, that's
Pretty-
something I can ask,
Yeah, pretty, but in an environmentally sensitive area,
right,
you
ultimately.
know, when we already have our recycling issues.
Yeah,
This
and
might
our-
not be,
Our sustainability coordinator will be at the meeting tomorrow as well,
Good.
and that's something that she's identified as a topic to bring up of, you know, if we're doing that, exactly as you said, how much is being put out into that for the sake of just looking pretty, if you will.
Is it limited to a certain amount of hours per day?
It could be
Like,
that,
or-
that might be perhaps, you know, at the first, right after dusk, the first hour of evening or something similar.
And also, Chris, they need to light the area up anyways. I mean, they need to have so many foot candles. Before they get a CO for that area, they're gonna have to issue a foot candle measurement. And
Right.
see what the lighting is. So versus the practicalness of put a high pressure sodium or mercury vapor light fixture out there, we can put a gas, which is done in other cities. And so I think it's adds a little bit of warmth and romance to it down there. The argument of the gas is a clean, a little more clean for our environment versus electric, which is, more pollutant. So, and we're producing gas in our country a lot more efficiently now than we did gas. I'm all for the gas. I don't work for the City of Clearwater Gas Company, but I'm sure they want to put them out there, but yeah,
They're very interested in it. We do have, if these were to be darkened at some points, we do have some lighting features that could indeed be gas lamps, sort of the flickering gas lamp, or it could be an electric powered. But we would have some safety lighting out there as well.
produce light.
But all very good things that I'll bring up tomorrow in our conference call with Stantec of, what's the intent for the flames out there? How often are they to be lit? What are the other lighting sources for, people to move around safely? And how does that impact, most notably, our components, the artwork, is if it's too close to it? And these sites have just been identified. It doesn't mean that we have to have 18 sites of artwork. We could condense them, we could have more, we could have less. But this is a very early thought and rendering of it as far as those locations. So move to Site 11, and this is the gateway site. This is like one of the first things that people will see if they're coming from Cleveland Street. And I will bring it back to the beginning so I can give you a closer look at the gateway. So this area that's sort of in the middle of the screen is the Gateway Plaza, and that serves as the entrance hub to the park. Excuse me. Site 11 is within that. There's some structures here that are designed aesthetically, and let me bring it in a little bit more. You'll be able to see those. Another flame. But these mangrove pods are part of a sort of stained glass garden, if you will. And those are part of the design budget. They're not going to impact our public art components. But the areas before we get into there, those large open plazas, and particularly right in this area, would be a great spot for a prominent piece of public artwork to welcome people into the park. I would recommend that to Stantec that we really look and focus on this site as well, site number 11, as a way of branding the park as well, associating it with a quality piece of artwork that people can navigate with, that they can recognize as they move through the area, and that can serve as a memory point for the park.
Now you're circling around, looks like just south of that, or
Yes.
east of it, so they'd be more back in that
They-
grassy down the line there a little bit, right?
Correct. They're identifying an area for a mosaic down there. And that is part of a fountain that runs down the side.
I'm thinking a mosaic, a freestanding one, or because you got that wall.
Yep, it's part of the wall there.
Okay.
And I think we don't get to that view of the wall until a little later in the presentation. Let's see. That wall is a cascading fountain, and they're recommending, there we are. Oh, goodness. Just had it. There we go. Okay, so to the your right of the screen, this area that's darkened here is a site for mosaic that they're looking into. That's like 11B, if you will.
Okay.
So we've got the Gateway Plaza and then 11B, which is a more pedestrian area focused as they walk down the stairs. They've identified that as mosaic. I think I said that the topic would be Clearwater history, but that can shift. But they were looking for a way to sort of memorialize what's happening in the city at a time that we're building this large, complex project. Yes?
What is the elevated walkway? Is that connecting the,
That connects a portion of the Civic Gateway area to the North Bluff Walk. It'll curve around. If you look to the right of site number 11, you'll see this serpentine walkway, and that's what that is. It'll come out near site 4.
cool.
I'll move on to sites 12, 13, and 14. I don't have a good representation of them in this presentation that was created, but let me pull out that flyover for you, and I can show you where they're at. This is a playground area. This is intended to be the fun section of the park for children and families, and sites 12, 13, and 14 would be interactive walls of a certain variety. They could be art walls, they could be graffiti walls, targeted graffiti walls. They could be They could be some form of interactive sculpture or element that's built into the wall. The intent that Stantec had would be that the population here in Clearwater drives the activity at those walls. There are a few digital, well, not digital, but pixelated spin ball walls that I've seen that people can create things as they move by and spin the balls. That's one I've seen that was demonstrated up in New York, which is really neat, in a plaza that people could, hi mom or different things, messages that all it takes if there's something offensive is just to spin the ball and it goes away. But you could make pixelated images, you could make stop motion animation as it moves through across the wall. Those are just some sort of elemental designs that we could consider as part of that portion of the park. So those are sites 12, 13, and 14. And then that brings us to what's intended as the sculpture garden for the park, and that is the Coachman Gardens. It's a series of plantings that are native Florida plants, flowers, and different trees and shrubs. But within this, we would have 4 pads for sculpture. And we could, in any configuration, do this as commissioned artwork or rotating artwork that would be able to move through the site as a form of sort of an extension or satellite of Sculpture 360. But we could also commission pieces there for permanent installation. So going through the sites as far as areas that would be very impactful for a piece of commissioned or funded public artwork would be sites 2, 5, 11, and 15 through 18, with smaller locations being at 4, 1, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and then 12, 13, and 14.
Was that last one you showed for the plantings, is that 15 through 18?
That's 15 through 18, yes. Yeah,
I
Dan.
have a quick question.
Mhm.
If say you did rotate the sculptures in sites 15 through 18, sort of the way it is on Cleveland Street, how does that, would that affect the budget? Or I guess, what did he?
We would have sort of an allotment or I think of what we would call it a legacy budget, essentially, of that we take funds from the allotment to pay for the honorarium for the sculptures over a period of time. Would that remain in the capital project fund for this? I don't think so. It would probably go into the discretionary fund that we would then draw from as far as paying for the honoraria. So we'd see the discretionary fund boost by $30,000, $60,000, $80,000, and then we would pay in allotments perhaps $5,000 a year for each sculpture for a large piece that would rotate through that area. So any questions that you might have? I know I'm hitting you with a lot of information. We've got time on this project. We've got sort of a progress that's happening with getting more funding for the artwork out at that site as well, and not having to rely on a small budget and have one small piece that's, well, maybe not small piece, but either one large signature piece and then broken out smaller pieces.
With 18 projects at 2,200,000, that's $11,000 pop
Yeah.
for each one, so it's not much there.
It's
So
not
they get
at
the
all.
600, and you said which we can talk about later, I guess, is the legal,
We'd be looking at 645,000.
which would be significantly
Yeah.
different. And then now the 18 site seems a lot more feasible, so to add more, I'm not sure how the rest of the group feels, but there's already, to me, there seems like there's a lot of artistic features built into Stantec's design of those.
Yes.
If all of that is actually going to be part of the construction budget that gets eventually done, I mean, the only other concern I would have is that we're going to be putting in art pieces that are really competing with them.
right?
I mean,
Yeah. Everything that you see in this presentation, as far as those aesthetic elements, are in their construction budget. So they wouldn't come out of our budget portion, but they could draw back some if there were areas that we wanted to, for example, have as a public art zone. You know, drawing back things at Site 11 and making sure that the prominence of that piece is first and foremost. Maybe maybe taking some of those and putting them into sites 1 and 4, that they're going to be more pedestrian sized and more apt to having a design element rather than a standing piece of public art.
and you brought something up that's pretty important is longevity and durability of some of those parts. I mean, whatever goes down there, you know, just like the tree we have out here, it needs to be able to take that extra salt and exposure that makes it not be able to withstand all that work. And of course, the landscaping is another big thing, because this is obviously going to be a heavily landscaped, constantly getting bumped, hit, beat, whatever that is. So now that just adds to the cost as well. All the reason to want to invest a little bit more money into something more durable.
Right, exactly. We want to make sure that, you know, we're going to have tradespeople out there with weed whackers and with ride-on mowers, and if they're getting too close to anything really delicate, then that's more that we might have to consider in the future for taking care of that piece.
Correct.
So we want to be very mindful of where we install pieces and make sure that, you know, let's say for Site 11A, the main feature there, that there's not really anything around it that needs to be maintained.
Right.
So that can be by itself on a pedestal up in a spot that's not going to be so heavily impacted.
And that 11, if they do end up doing the mosaic, which is that's a good idea actually, because you got that big wall running along on the side that you could do a mosaic. And if the design team, if Stantec designs it appropriately, they can actually isolate. Now they can isolate everything, just as long as they have a nice perimeter around there, so that there isn't as much landscape potential impacts. So, but it looks to me like on the design that's going to have some landscaping down below it, even if it's just shrubs and brushes that always overgrow and are just going to get. They'll take a heavy beating over time.
Yes.
But
Perhaps there's a way of, like you said, isolating or bringing the mosaic up a bit and concentrating it in areas rather than having it go completely down there.
to the bottom.
So that, yeah, exactly.
It seems like our opportunity too would be to think, you know, sustainable, budget conscious, obviously, but also something a little more unique, because as you go across the U.S. these days, you see beautiful projects like these with the mosaics and the color concrete and the walls and things, but it seems like our opportunity, having this separate budget, would be to put in some pieces that are truly unique.
Yes.
I mean, well, all of it's beautiful in art, some pieces that really would stand apart from the more generic, if you will, and I say that loosely and respectfully, of the, you know, architectural elements, like truly more the art elements. And that would seem to be the opportunity here for us.
Yeah. Having a construction team and having the design team involved with us so early on is great, because we can commission artists to sort of guide them in their process and say, you know, let's see this moving in this direction, having an artistic design, an artistic hand in the creation of it, and then the contractor builds it, which then the artist doesn't have to come in, fly in, stay here, build it, if it's something that can be done by the tradespeople at the site, and then vetted or approved by the artist at the end, and they say, okay, this looks good, you've done it the way I intended it to be.
That's a good idea, yeah. But even then, even in addition to that, having the artists on board early can help the design team, aid them in what they need to do to build the foundation for whatever it is, if that's what they're going to do.
Exactly.
So do two different approaches, but yeah, you can somehow weave both of those in there, then you got the best of both worlds. If we could get some of the built into the design, great. If not, then at least have the design work around the actual art and not the art work around the design.
Right, precisely.
Chris, you gonna be going to the board meeting pretty soon, you said, coming up?
There's a conference call tomorrow,
Okay.
and we have them bi-weekly, but tomorrow is going to be one focused on sustainability and the artwork components of the site.
Any budget numbers coming up, you guys could discuss that?
For the artwork or for the
Yes.
project?
Yeah,
Well, that's where we're talking about, and I'll get into it a little bit more in the future, but we've got at least $200,000 per the cap, and then possibly $645,000 if the cap does not apply to this project.
I'm used to doing a lot of airport projects and stuff, and I was just thinking, looking at your renderings here, you got a lot of Ned Jewel trees in there, they're not indigenous to Florida, and they're having a lot of boar beetle issues, and they're dying, they're extremely expensive, if anybody buy those trees. We buy quite a few of them, they're huge and expensive, they try to match ones downtown. Why don't we do something more indigenous, is use the cabbage palm, which is our state tree anyways, right? And then save a lot of money and give that money to our art, you know?
Right.
I mean, I would just transfer the budget over to those wonderful art people like us, you know? There's a thought. Yeah, it's kind of common sense. And those things are, they're not indigenous, they're native of India, actually, and they're,
They drop the fruits,
thought.
and there's a lot more maintenance to go on with that, too. Yeah. So, you know, if we do put an eye towards having more sustainable pieces here that flourish in our climate rather than, you know, get sick or get more diseases that they may not have in the area that those plants are from. If we have more indigenous species.
yeah, they weren't showing them on the renderings, that was, not to be.
Oh, these two are 30%. They've chosen a lot of these just because they simply look good or they're in their catalog as far as the video. Someone probably said palm tree and they grabbed a pretty looking palm tree.
Cabbage there.
Yeah.
There's some Ned Jewels there. You go through.
Anything else that you'd like for me to bring up at the call tomorrow?
The, so the schedule, you timeframe for their design schedule and construction schedule versus our schedule for getting the call to artists on the docket. Do we have a kind of a map out of how that's looking?
As
So we-
far as getting a call to artists out, I'd like to have that done, you know, before the summer,
Okay,
which would give us a chance to review and discuss more at our next meeting. We have a June 11th meeting, and we can talk about that.
okay.
You know,
So if you're looking at, okay, that makes sense, but then I assume this decision has to be made, like, okay, we're doing 18 sites, and is this what we're gonna use? That has to be kind of finalized in order for you to produce the
To
call
do
to
the
artists,
call
because
to
you don't know what it is, so don't get the cart in front of the horse, but at the same time, as soon as they make, where that decision can be made, and then what is the need to make that decision happen? Is that gonna be a decision from the council? Is it gonna be a recommendation from our group, or it's collaborative?
I think it'd be best as a recommendation from our group
Okay.
to go forward to the project planners as far as that. I'll have a lot more information after our meeting tomorrow because I'll be able to ask them a lot of the fundamental questions that I'm only getting just portions of from the plans that I'm reading. I'm happy I got included as far as their 60% design plan. There's about 1,000 pieces of paper and we're sheet L11, but we're in there. And it's heartening to see that we're involved at this point in the process rather than the park being built and saying, okay, go pretty it up, you know?
Yes.
Is there a color scheme? Is this representative?
Oh, that's a different section in our agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. I will report back to you with a lot more detail.
Right on.
You did a great job.
All right, so new business, go to the next one, which is the Crest Lake Park.
Yes. Okay, so that is part of your packet. Those are the splash pad photos. There are 3 different things that are in your packet, 1, 2, and 3. After talking with Parks and Recreation, it looks like their plan and the most feasible public art component at that site, the most publicly accessible and usable, will be a splash pad for children to use at the site. Looking at the aquatic site, maintaining a fountain out there or maintaining something in the lake could have an environmental impact as far as the nesting birds and wading birds that are on that side of the lake, or it could also have an impact of the water just having a sculpture in the water. You know, that, it's pretty rough to maintain. Looking at the splash pad, I just wanted to bring up some examples of what a splash pad artwork component could look like. The one on the bottom, I'm sorry, I just arranged them, but the first one that you have in here, this one here is in Deerfield Beach, so that is in Florida here. The other two are up from the northeast. But what's great about the splash pad is that it's also an artist design project, that the artist can lead the design team on that, rather than buying standard stock or single colored splash pad flooring. The artist could direct the team that's installing there as to what their design is and then incorporating it into the actual construction of the piece. It's very similar to what we did at the Countryside Library with Joan Weissman and the terrazzo flooring out there. Joan designed that terrazzo. She sent all of her files to the actual contractor for the terrazzo, and then once it was finished, she came down and certified, yep, this looks good, this is the way we wanted it to go. So it's a hand-in-hand process.
Did they price out the mosaics versus the terrazzo on that job?
With Countryside?
Yeah.
I don't think we looked at mosaic. I think it was 3 different terrazzo
Oh,
floors.
terrazzo's are fantastic, they do great artwork with it, that's what I'm all for it. Less maintenance with terrazzo.
Yep.
But in this case, it would be those soft pads, or would this be?
I'm not sure what the exact surface would be for that, if it's that squishy, soft material, or if it's actually a gridded concrete. That's something still to be determined out at the site. That's something I'll pursue with Parks and Rec. I know a lot of things have shifted around over there as far as their plans and their internal structure, so I'll keep up with them.
So that's going out as just for the Crest Lake Park anyway, so.
Yes.
And then how do we participate or actually contribute, I guess, to that? Especially if you incorporate that into the actual construction process. Who quantifies our participation versus what was already in there, if you will?
Right, we've got, our artwork component for that is $64,000. So we'd be able to do perhaps the splash pad and some adjoining features with that if it's a design portion. And then I actually control the amount of artwork budget that goes out to the artist there. So I'll be the one that'll be monitoring it for you. And the 1% allotment is made at the start of the project. That finance sets it aside originally.
Right, and that makes sense. I was just thinking more of our budget's going to go, if it was to go towards just having an artist design it,
Right.
then we're just gonna pay for that portion of it, and then do we have to contribute to some of the construction materials if they did something over the top?
$64,000 won't get you very far.
Yeah.
No,
It's
that's
gonna-
what I was thinking. It's
Right.
not, so, yeah, that will almost pay
Yeah.
for the artist,
Unless
not the
the
materials.
Unless the artist designs something that's cost prohibitive, that we're going to stick within the design of the materials that they've already set aside for that project.
Whatever was in there, that they just have, okay.
Yep, and then the artist gets the design portion for creating that,
Makes sense.
you know, the actual artwork feature of it.
Yeah, I don't remember how they did the Clearwater Library, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right?
Okay, that's all on that one, right?
Yep, that's all I got for you.
So next item is the staff update on the US 19 and Gulf to Bay Boulevard, the
Okay.
repair.
Per our discussions at our last meeting, I've contacted FDOT Maintenance, Florida Department of Transportation in Pinellas Park. They've got a maintenance division down there.
Oh,
In our contract with DOT, they install the ARC component and the city is the designated maintenance agency. So we use our traffic engineering department to maintain the lights at the site, which includes our rope lighting as well. So I am working with traffic ops to schedule a switch out of that lighting. It's going to take some time to actually put that in place because they're going to have to close down portions of the road. So it may occur over time, but we are working on getting that fixed and back up to its display status.
just make sure they understand it was Neil's suggestion that caused that.
Well, no, it should,
Probably going, who saw that?
but I mean, the artwork should be as it was intended, and we have maintenance budget, or maintenance funds in our budget for that project. It's just, we put in decorative lighting there and it should be operating, to 100%.
No, I'm being facetious.
Oh,
It was actually a really good suggestion, because when he said that, I realized that, because I drive under that sometimes at night, I was like, that is kind of
It's a little
sparsy.
spotty,
And it is
yeah.
that is a gateway coming into to the city,
Yeah,
so it's a big
exactly.
deal. So it was a good catch on his part.
Yeah.
I'm just,
But yeah, who thought
that
up
one
this
down.
brilliant idea? Yeah,
but that's great. So our city folks have to fix it then,
Yes.
not DOT.
correct,
So put the hammer down.
right? That's what we're working on. Delicately, and it's what is it, a felt hammer?
We'll just say politically correct.
Right,
Be
yes.
gentle with the
gentleman.
maintenance department, otherwise you'll never get it done.
Well, yeah, DOT tends to operate on their own schedule, so.
Yeah, they do.
It's a good thing, actually, that we do have our traffic ops division, because they'll be the ones that are out there doing the construction.
And that will be a tough one to do, you're right, because they gotta shut down Gulf to Bay. That ain't fun.
No.
That won't be fun. Okay. Thank you for that update, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And next one is review the public art maximum requirements. So you got some information on what legal's review of that?
Yes, at our last meeting, we were discussing that, and that has a major impact on the Imagine Clearwater Park project. So we had a meeting, I was able to meet with Assistant City Manager Michael Delk. We discussed the project. His opinion on that it would not negatively impact it, that we would be able to have the full 1% at the site. He has spoken to Ms. Aiken, our city attorney, and in their initial discussions, she didn't see anything that would limit us from having the $645,000. However, she was going to review the ordinance in detail to just make certain. I was being very, very cautious in how I was approaching it, because I didn't want for us to have any surprises as far as proceeding forward with a $645,000 budget and then coming back with a $200,000. So I will keep up with the legal department and see what their final determination will be for that. But right now, we're proceeding with the design as far as these sites that we have, and that we're not being limited until we hear otherwise.
Okay. Yeah, because you gave us the ordinance a few meetings back
Mm-hmm.
to review, so, and forgive me, I cannot.
The ordinance says that all city capital improvement projects
Contribute to
must
1%.
dedicate 1% with a maximum required expenditure of $200,000. But this is not really your typical project. It's definitely a legacy project for the city, and I don't know even if it's called a capital improvement project. It may be called a special initiative or something similar to that. So that might come in terms with the language of the ordinance as well.
But they were looking for a variance against that ordinance or something along
Yes,
those lines?
exactly, right.
Okay.
If it turns out that we want to, in the future, amend the ordinance, I would recommend that we change the language to remove that cap. It was something that was added way back at the start of the origin of it with, Imagine Clearwater wasn't even a thought at that point in time. So now, we don't want to unnecessarily limit ourselves to, fit within the guidelines of the ordinance.
That's a good point. It was probably, and I'm guessing it was probably put in there because at the time the ordinance was initially put together, they had actually wanted developers to contribute.
Correct.
And there probably was lobbying to say, well, if I'm going to contribute, I don't want to be all of a sudden having to put out all this money. So that's where that cap probably came from.
Right.
Take them out of the equation. It's just pure city
Yep,
funded. Well, then let's just put it in there.
absolutely.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, they need to rewrite it. Make that happen.
Yeah. I would love to get into that ordinance and change some things around, make it a little more fitting with, public art. It's done in a really municipal structure, which I totally understand. But we, have some more arts-friendly language that we can put into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that, sir.
Yeah.
All right, so old business, our discretionary fund balance.
Yes, our discretionary fund balance is at $92,785.
Man, what are we gonna do with that? That's just what we have, and there's nothing actually, because nobody's here to ask for any more, so we're
Right, I think
holding steady.
I think the requests for grant funds might be quiet for a little while now, but you never know.
Yeah, no initiatives now, okay. And the update on the FYI Community Partnership, Inc., Public Art Initiative?
Yes, our grant of $8,500 to FYI Community Partnership goes before the City Council at our April 2nd meeting. That's something that the council needs to review and approve. We make a recommendation to them for the grant funding. The other grant funding that we had that went before the council passed unanimously without much discussion on that. So I would hope that this one proceeds the same way.
Okay, great. And last item on the old business would be the review update on the Sculpture 360 Season X, Season 10.
I'm going to, I'm going to release a call to artists at the end of this month. It's going to be for the 3 sculptures. It will be for Florida artists with a sustainable and recycling theme that we discussed at our last meeting. We also have another opportunity coming up for a 4th piece of artwork. We're creating a new pedestal that'll be at the old City Hall building. They're filling in the fountain and giving us the opportunity to put some artwork on it. So we're going to have a slab there, and we can choose artwork existing from local artists or look into the applicants from Sculpture 360 to choose someone to place out there as well. That one will be up and running pretty quickly. Sculpture 360 will change out in August of this year.
Awesome. I know they were filling that in with concrete.
They'll do, it's just dirt fill right now. They wanted to make sure that
Cap it
could,
with concrete.
yeah, it could be reversible if needed in the future.
We want the fountain back, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Use it.
All right, so that's it for the old business items.
Yep.
Any more to report to us since you've given us a mouthful already?
I sure have a lot of information, but the program's health is very good. You know, we're moving along quickly. We're working with a lot of different divisions, neighborhood services, with our sustainability partners, and the community development plan is getting a re-up in the next couple of months. So I'm contributing portions of more arts-friendly language to that plan and incorporating, rather than just one line, we're going to be in a couple different sections of the plan. The intent is that it becomes a city-used document and not something that's considered just a planning-only document that stays in the planning division and doesn't get consulted by anyone else over the course of the years.
Makes sense.
So just incorporating more language in there to commission of public artists where feasible, to look to more local artists to support our creative economy here in Pinellas County and Clearwater, and to really involve public artwork in the beginning of site projects, so we have more time to take advantage of that.
Agree. Awesome. Okay. Any board members to be heard?
I had a couple of questions. Chris, and thank you for doing a great job today.
Thank
And
you.
wanted to ask you about Fire Station 46. There was something that, what's the status of that? Is it-
Yes, that's our beach station. So it's actually one of the most publicly accessed stations in the city. I met with the chief and the construction engineer for that project, and the firefighters would like to really do a piece of public artwork out there. They want to make sure that it's something the public can interact with. And one of the things that folks want to see when they come out to the site are the patches that are traded between fire station members. When they come down and visit, they'll trade patches out with one another, and that was something that was thought to be, maybe that could be part of a tiling installation out at the site. They're really not even in the design phase yet of the project, but they're thinking of ways, and it was really nice. The chief was really forward in involving the community and wanting to make sure that that's something that people can benefit and access from.
Is that something that we need to contribute money towards?
Eventually.
We will eventually, yeah.
Okay, so it's, so I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with, is this? a
It
new-
was in our, it's in our annual master plan.
Okay.
It's just further down.
Okay.
So we have 5 projects as far as operational this year. We're working on 3 of them right now.
Okay.
And those are on the horizon projects. Station 46 is one of them.
And there's one other project that was coming up in conversations about the Countryside Police Station substation.
Right.
Is there any up there?
Yeah, so right now,
Is that these?
that's at the corner of McMullen and
Countryside.
580.
Oh, yeah, 580
Countryside,
McMullen.
way up there. Currently, it's a trailer. And so they're actually going to build an actual building out there. We're looking into the budget allotments because we've got penny for Pinellas money going into it. But we also have general insurance fund, which I'm not sure if it would be restrictive against public artwork or not. So I'm looking into that with finance. If it is, then it'll likely just pay into the discretionary fund, because with the penny amount, I think it's in our master plan, but I think it's $10,000 for that project, and really wouldn't get us much of anything out there.
Forgive my ignorance on this one, but is that just they're gonna tear down and rebuild the station?
Yeah.
Get rid of the trailer?
That basically build a station and replace the trailer that they have. Yeah.
Hate to see it, I used to drive by it every day because it's right next to where I live, and it's just behind the trees, that's all I know, it's behind the trees.
Yeah.
Can't barely even see the thing.
Yeah, it's not,
I show I know the police cars go in and they come out.
Right.
Go in, they come out.
they're right on that corner.
Yeah, that super
across
busy
from the high
corner.
school. Yeah. But yeah, it's a really, it's not a really publicly accessible location. But the idea behind it is if the insurance funds can contribute to that, that'd be about $100,000 that we could use out at that site or somewhere close nearby. It's just a matter of, is that fund restrictive or not?
Gotcha. Now, that would be a very,
That'd be a
very
sizable
busy
project.
intersection too, that would have a lot of eyes on it.
Yes.
Because the car count there is got to be pushing what it is at 19.
It's huge.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you, Chris, you did a great job.
Sure. Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions? No? Okay. Well, if that's all for today, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Chris, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
And